Welcome. Thank you for joining the Academy of Adoption and Assisted Reproduction Attorneys. Today, we're covering the state of Alabama, and we only have one fellow to introduce you to, but it will be the fellow that you want to contact for any of your information. All right, David, if you could introduce yourself to everybody.
Hello, everyone. I'm David Broome. I practice in Alabama throughout the state in my family building law practice. I have been practicing law based primarily in Mobile since 1977. I was with a firm, but as I transitioned out into a small practice of my own, I had an opportunity to do an interstate compact adoption. And no one could show me how to do it, so I had to learn, primarily by networking with other people who I later became fellows with in the American Academy of Adoption Attorneys. I had always been very interested in adoptions because I'm adopted. So it was a real thrill for me to start doing that sort of family building along with what became an exclusive divorce and family law practice. Adoptions back when I started doing them in the early 80s were plentiful. We did a lot of interstate compact adoptions because we were an adoption-friendly state, and people came from all over the United States and occasionally from a foreign country to adopt babies that had been born in Alabama and needed a good home. As we began to handle that, we got more and more questioned about what happens in these cases where there's a surrogate mother. And that was the only term that was used then. Nobody talked about a gestational carrier. And we had to, regardless of what happened in the process medically, we always had to go through what I call the fiction of an adoption. Because even if it was her egg, if you did your family building that way, that you had to go through an adoption when the baby was born. You didn't have the process that we later started. That process came about when we had a state committee from the Alabama Law Institute that was comprised of judges, lawyers, and law professors. And we had some medical input to come up with a bill that we thought would pass the Alabama legislature. And so we looked at the Uniform Parentage Act, and we were able to go down to just what we needed that we thought would pass the legislature without any controversy to have a framework for this aspect of family building. So that was passed in 2008. I was fortunate then to have a judge that I had known who would have original jurisdiction of parentage actions. And shortly after it became law, I was approached by a gentleman from out of state, and he had already entered into a contract with a young woman from our area who was carrying twins. And we were able to show the judge how we could obtain a medical affidavit and show truly who the parents were, explaining the in vitro process through the affidavit. And that judge and I came up with what we're now doing in Alabama successfully many, many times a year. And I've talked to colleagues around the country, and they have similar stories. And so we began doing them. And since then, we have been very, very fortunate. We have done probably cases involving 15 to 25 countries, most of the states in the union. We are called upon for our services exclusively when the baby is going to be born in Alabama, because that's what gives our court, our juvenile court that has original jurisdiction over parentage actions, the jurisdiction to declare parentage, which is what we do. So we have a procedure where after we have a contract, and we make sure the contract contains the type of terms we need to have a proceeding in our court where we will have the parentage done without a lot of legal fanfare, if you will. We first go to court about 4 months along in the pregnancy. And that's when we open the file by filing our original petition. And that results in a pre-birth order. Our office is the only party that needs to go to court. We handle that proceeding with the judge and his staff. They're very familiar with us now. And so we receive a pre-birth order. That proceeding is participated in by our parents, the intended parents or the intended parent, and the gestational carrier, and if she's married, her spouse. They sign off on that. Then we don't go back to court until the baby's born, and we go back and we receive a final order. And with that final order, we're able to be sure that the only names that ever appear on a birth certificate, either at the hospital or at the Bureau of Vital Records at our state capitol in Montgomery, are always our clients, the parents or the parent. And that's how the birth certificate now has evolved in our cases. It doesn't say mother or father, it's parent and parent. And it's worked fine. So that's the procedure that we have that we're very proud of legally. And as we think, a great way to build a family if you want to go through the gestational process. We do cases for same-sex couples. We do cases for unmarried couples, for single couples. And again, as long as there is the proper medical affidavit, which we obtain, that explains the in vitro process and how the mother or the carrier came to be carrying the baby, whether it's her egg or not, then we are able, with that sworn testimony attached to our first petition that results in the pre-birth order, we're able to go through the process that I've just described. So I would be welcome to talking to anyone about any aspect of family building in Alabama. But increasingly, what we're seeing more and more is that gestational cases are what most families who want to build their families that way are going, rather than adoption. So that's been our experience.
Great, David. So I think the only thing I didn't hear that I want to clarify for those who are listening, does there have to be a genetic link between one of the intended parents, or can they use an embryo donation?
We can use donations. There
Okay.
does not have to be a genetic link. Thank you for bringing that up. No, there does not have to be any genetic link. Nothing is required genetically. They can both be donors, and frequently are donors.
Right.
And sometimes the intended parents is either their egg or their sperm.
All right. Well, you covered everything else for sure. I know people who are flipping from state to state, they're just trying to find out, can they utilize that state? And you covered it with single intended parents, same-sex intended parents, everything's covered there. So anybody that wants additional information about Alabama, obviously David is who you want to contact without a doubt. And his last name is Broome, and you can find his contact information at the Academy's website. When you go to the Academy's website, we have a map, and you can narrow it down to the state of Alabama or any other state you may be looking at, and you can obtain David's information there. The website is www.adoptionart.org. And we look forward to you contacting him, and please reach out to David for information about Alabama. He's obviously the go-to person. Thank you.